Hello everyone, this is Fantastic Worlds, welcome back to Lovecraft Country and the Secret World Interludes, our journey through the lore of the secret world. Now, we'll be covering over the Wabanaki territory on the Blue Mountain area today, and a bit of their lore, but before we begin, let's discuss something slightly topical, excuse me. Now, I'm actually from Maine, so I'm going to be able to recognize what's authentic and not. And while some elements of the Wabanaki culture do resemble the touristy look that some of the tribes or people pretending to be the tribes do present, it's nowhere near authentic. I'm afraid that there's also a bit of lore wrong here. For example, the Wabanaki are an entire nation of tribes that covered over the larger area around New England, not a single tribe, and certainly not one down to a few dozen members. It's also the fact that these would more accurately probably be the Micmacs or another tribe of that area that these would be representing. Now, if this was the case, that the Wabanaki didn't call each other that and were simply, using the standard ignorance that Westerners use, assuming the standard ignorance that Westerners have for their culture, I could go with that, but they refer to themselves as the Wabanaki and even as Indians, which would not be what any member of a tribe would do. They would at the very least call themselves a tribe. So what we are looking at is not a well-researched native tribal culture, but sort of a Hollywood version that cribbed off some beliefs in the late 20th century. I don't blame the developers. I don't know if they were actually even American people who developed these sort of things, and why a lot of the other stuff is researched towards the literary ends of the genre. They're not doing a lot of real world. So at the very least, I'm giving these guys a minor pass and saying this is an alternate timeline. I mean, we don't have dreamers in our time, at least I hope we don't. But that being disclaimer aside, let's start. Now, the entrance to the Wabanaki home, so to speak, has a crashed mail truck by it with an SD card that starts one of my favorite quest chains, the bonus episode that I had earlier. So I'm going to put a link to that here if you, it's one of my favorite episodes. But as you can see, the Wabanaki Arts and Crafts sign is actually repurposed. Olawaski Way is not something I recognize. Correct me in the comments if I've missed something previously, but it's actually the general store sign, because originally, before they went touristy, before they decided to make a sudden change in their culture, as it were, this was simply a general store. People could restore their goods. Now, of course, we're currently in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, but you'll notice that it seems rather clear in this zone. In fact, the Wabanaki Trailer Park is one of the safest points in the entire first act. In other words, the Solomon Island episodes, and there's a reason for that. As you can see, Indian Village Museum, free genuine souvenirs. Yeah, these guys are going tourists. Go children slow. Never understood why they did it that way, but yeah. As you can see, they have both people with guns for the more basic stuff, and as you get closer, you'll begin to notice that they have wards set in area to handle the magical stuff. So the Wabanaki at least may not have quite the heritage it once did before, but it is currently well stocked, probably the best well-defended zone due to their prior knowledge of the horrors. I mean, after all, I'll get that later. Even the sheriff's department is under constant siege, but you can see it's almost peaceful here. In fact, they even have electricity, which I'm assuming that is from possibly solar systems with extended batteries. A lot of tribals in this particular, I'm guilty of it too. In this particular timeline, in 2012, when this occurs, have switched over to renewable energies because, well, they're kind of their own government, and they don't have to worry about lobbyists trying to keep them on oil. But in any case, this is the general store, and as you can see, rebranded as Arts and Crafts Shop. So, you get those tourists coming by who want something authentic. And as you can see, as we enter, God, it's a good day for mail, isn't it? As you can see, this has become the de facto headquarters. Now, the two leaders of the common defense, so the people with guns, are over here, are the Gamlins, and we'll be talking to them in a moment. But a couple things here. First of all, you can see that powwow, yeah, they're really tomahawk, yeah, they're really playing up the stereotypes. This is not anything but what Westerners expect to see. And even some books. A couple of hunting rifles. Probably not tribal drums. The thing that gets me the most here, though, is that they still have the original Council of Venice represented the Apocryphy rather than their own people, which is kind of strange since they swapped out the this good dude over at Reds, which would be more likely to have retained their council member as opposed to one of their own tribal members as merchant. It's a pretty minor dig. Hey, you still got ketchup. The apocalypse can't be that bad. But, you know, and of course, Space Invaders. My favorite generic video game. Now, let's talk to the, shall we say, the first two members, Paul and Annika Gamelin, and see what they have to say about themselves.
Friend, I haven't got time to be shook up. Not when my wife and I are the only ones in the park who can shoot a can off a fence at 10 foot.
That's bad.
I'm not even kidding. We held tryouts. Sure thing this is wicked strange, but it's just a real bad day in our new normality. A different kind of survivalism.
Yeah, there's not even enough ammunition left to do practice. Ooh, these guys are screwed.
Back in the day, I said to old Joe, I think I've seen something from the stories out there. He says, yup. Yup. I tell him, I thought they were just stories. And he gives me one of those looks from over his glasses. If I told you a story about land across the ocean from the island, would you believe that?
Not quite sure what they're trying to say there.
I say, sure I would. I've seen it. Oh, he likes that. Gets his big old grin on. He says, well, Paul, now you've seen the Wendigo, too.
Yeah, Wendigos. Alright. The Wendigos that we have here are, again, the Hollywood version. The real Wendigo being a evil spirit of the First Nations of Canada, of hunger and madness, which there's a lot more to it than that, but suffice it to say that the evil Yeti that we're seeing out there is pretty much a Hollywood reinterpretation of that. But let's see what he knows about the secret world.
Well, we never really had any trouble with your type on the hunts. Maybe some get a little too keen about waving their fancy swords around instead of a good rifle.
Guilty.
I'd tell them, these creatures can take a high-caliber bullet on the skull like you'd slugged a rock at them. So are you positive you want to get up close?
Well, I am an immortal, semi-divine cyborg with resurrective capabilities.
There was one guy, though. Wanted to blood himself from a Wendigo. That's what he said, and I looked at Annika thinking, this is not gonna fly. She told him no way, no how. Maybe he didn't know the legends like we did, but you don't want to be getting Wendigo in you.
Okay, that's definitely adding the freaking lycanthropy as an infectious disease trope, which it isn't in the original legends. Ugh. Again, we're dealing with 20th century Hollywood, not legends here.
He kicked off over that, so we wheeled the truck around, took him back to the airport so fast he hardly had time to pack his little photocopied pamphlets.
You got pamphlets?
Like you see on television. What are they called? The Morning Light?
Oh.
Guess those Moonies are soft in the head after all.
No, maybe they wanted their own Wendigo.
I'm not much of a deep thinker. Working in the outdoors, it pays to me more concerned with what's happening than the why.
True.
But when the world went all to hell, sure I had to do some considering.
Yeah, y'all do.
Perhaps the reason we ran across those beasts when we did was a sign. It seems animals are the first to know when there's a big change coming.
True.
And perhaps I should have known it then. I just sensed it. Like at the end of fall when you know a hard freeze is coming on overnight.
It's true, we have become disconnected from nature, and that is going to kill us in the end.
And there's always been stories. And not just old Joe's, the townies bring their own too. And there's a Kingsmith explanation for all the good and bad in the world. Mostly the bad. Hell, I've told college kids a horror story or two about the old trapper cabin to keep them out of it. When the fog rolls back, what if this is the way the world's going to be from now on?
It may in fact be, and considering the timeline is that you guys are probably going to be bombed out of existence when I left. Because remember, every time we go back through the portal, we come back to October 2012. This is before the final solution, as it were. Everybody we're talking to is probably going to be dead. Get that cheerful thought. Let's go talk to the better half.
When we just did adventure tours, I got a lot of bright-eyed questions about spirits, ancestors, feeling the power of the earth and such. I'm Wabanaki Confederacy. I must be into that stuff, right? I never thought of it as a mystical thing, a tribal thing, to treat the land with respect. We learned from our elders. You can't find much older out here than the land.
That's true. The Great Mother is the oldest of us all.
That's the starry-eyed version. The one down here in the grit is that the land will kill you and keep on going like a logging truck.
Hell yes.
So you respect it and try to find peace with that idea. Understand that it's so much bigger than all of us and has its own big plan.
Yep, definitely does. One day the dirt is going to win. Gravity will win. Keep this in mind.
Yes, this world has slipped out of balance. And yes, we have words for that with a whole bunch of vowel sounds. But you and I have been walking on a giant all these years. It just shrugged its shoulders.
Oh, hell yes. I like her. She's got a perspective. Tell me about the island.
Before the storm, Paul and I were talking expansion. I'd talk, he'd agree. On the mainland, maybe up in the Appalachians. Been tracking sightings of unidentified creatures there since we got started.
It's true. There's got to be more places than this, and definitely more territory before they were in. We're looking for the evil creatures of the secret world. In our world, who knows? I've heard reports of cryptids that so many that, there may in fact one day be something to it. I ain't looking for it, though. Dude, it's weird to stare.
You cross off half of them as overactive imagination, and we're still talking dozens.
True.
We could move up from 1 hunt a month to 2 a week. Damn, but those New Yorkers can't get enough trophies. Decorating their boardrooms or something. Sightings were on the up and up here too. Not just the Sasquatch and the Wendigo. There's something out there. Different to the rest.
Yeah, normally I have trouble with trophy gaming, trophy hunting, but frankly, if your game is apocalyptic monsters willing to devour people's souls, I'm gonna say that the CEOs are slightly less worse.
I hear its call some nights. It's a wrong sound. Not an animal call, but something that's making a noise like it thinks an animal should. Doesn't even carry on the air right. If it's marking out its territory, that's the best of a bad situation. It means it's not coming down here.
Yeah, but what if it isn't? I've been in the deep depths of the woods of Maine, and there are calls I will not follow.
If there's still a tribe here, I'd call it a dysfunctional one. I mostly keep out of Wabanaki business. They can't get along with each other, let alone cope in the real world. And half the townies still lock up their mouthwash when they see one of us coming.
Ugh, God, stereotypes.
Then there's the matter of our sacred land. Sometimes they can't trip over themselves fast enough to sell it off by the yard. Others, they dig in their heels even when psychoil suits are here sweating money. Me, I think they like the fantasy that there's good soil to protect and sour soil to make the evil eye at.
Afraid that the sour soil does exist. But yeah, Psychol, by the way, is Oriachi. You keeping up with the lore?
It doesn't work that way. People gave Blue Ridge a bad name, not ancient curses. No one disturbed the burial grounds, and yet there they are, up and walking anyway. It can take days for these boys to agree on the communal food order. If they were the defenders of this island, I'd feel bad for the island.
I do. Anyway, so that's more or less those are the ones in charge of the defense around here. And they're probably the best these people have, but... Hi, guy. Ugh, numbers are a bit thin. So, let's talk to some of the more typical people, Joe and Frank. And as you notice, Joe doesn't have anything to say. He's basically a mission giver. But Frank, his brother, he has something to say.
Ain't this all a fucking boot in the ass? I had plans that were gonna get us somewhere. Oh, how's your whale watching operation going, brother? Seeing any no whales got itself lost and showed up around here in 20-odd years now, huh? Ain't this all a fucking boot in the ass?
Alright, officially I'm going to let you know the only reason I'm staying around for this conversation is completeness, because god damn it, I hate it when people are so rude.
I think you caught the brothers Mahando here at a good time. Used to be we were busting rocks at the quarry all day, knocking back cheap cans all night. You been saving that one up, huh, genius? You go ahead and enjoy it, because we ain't going back to that life. Not after what we heard from the mountain. Oh yeah, that old thing's been yabbering away for longer than Brother has. ever figure out what it was saying, and it was better that way, because when its voice became so damn clear, it got love for our people, and that ain't half of it. No, that ain't it. She said she heard it like the cracking of ice on a river that's frozen. When it knows, it's got you.
Yeah, if you recall, the horror at the center of the mountain is one of the dreamers beneath the Gaian engine, and it wants out. So if it's talking to you, if you recall the missions back at the mansion there, escaping me, I'll put a link to it up there, where essentially went over the history of it, and people kept hearing that voice every generation and going mad and killing people, all for the sake of the power of the dreamers. Now let's see what you have to say about Ami. That would be, however, if you recall, the chosen one back that we saw last Interludes, their sister, I believe.
With Pop's deadbeat brother still hanging around her like a fart stuck in a cushion. Used to come by every summer with a damn fool idea to smooth things out with all of us. Girl sure took some shouting down. She always did. Who does she think she is? Telling us to be strong as a family, strong as a people, all while she's siding with him? Over our own flesh and blood? Her own brothers? Damn! She said we better stand together, or something was gonna come wash us all away.
You know, she was right, but frankly, screw you guys. I've decided I don't like them. I mean, seriously. The apocalypse and you're still holding grudges. To heck with it. I mean, Joe's 5 times the man you are, damn it. Anyways, that out of my system. Let's go talk to the lore keeper, as it were, old Joseph.
Hello there.
Hi. Not who he was, and frankly, that's not a good sign. Sometimes you may have never heard of the white noise phenomenon, but some people swear you can hear the voices of dead and static. I'm not going to try it. If you try it, well, get ready for a positive result, is all I say. Anyways, tell me about yourself.
Call me Old Joe. That's what everybody here calls me. On account of young Joe. I'm his brother. Did you know? Also, I'm loath to admit, because I'm a very old man. Nicknames know no mercy.
Well, you know, getting older is better than the alternative. I like that animation.
These days, I guess you could call me a story keeper. I don't tell them anymore. Nobody wants to listen to an old man telling even older stories. The only thing that matters to the young ones is the present. And those who have been here a while, they prefer to look to the future, not to the past.
Which is a shame, because there is so much sacred oral lore, I think, has been lost due to mass annihilation of tribal culture. And now, the few things that are written down fading from the, excuse me. Or fading from existence as even print fades away.
So, I keep the stories, but I don't tell them anymore. Not unless someone comes and asks, or if they're outsiders and don't know not to encourage me.
Actually, I kind of wish I had the option to ask him for all the stories, but all we're going to get is these 3, unfortunately.
It's a sad thing when families can't settle their differences. And 40 years is a long time.
Oh God, 40 years?
That's how long we've been half a tribe. Even here, we're divided. Those of us who chose to stay in the camp, we've got our schemes and our plans. Frank and Joe with their schemes.
Ugh.
A casino. Might as well be wearing headdresses and charging tourists for pictures. And Paul and Annika bringing big city folk out there into the forest to hunt exotic prey.
Look, if it's evil and flesh-eating, I say, you know, send the townspeople after it. I mean, even if they get killed, it's no big loss.
They all believe the land belongs to us, that she's ours to exploit. Like it's our birthright to take advantage of the land. Like she owes us anything.
She owes us nothing. We belong to the land. After all, like I said before, she'll swallow us all up in the end.
I'm not saying we're the only ones at fault. Red. Now, there's a man some would call pig-headed, and they wouldn't be wrong. So, he's a man of principles. And I can't say I'd have done differently if I were in his shoes, but he played his part in this. He was never one to forgive.
Pride will get you, even if you're a good man.
But we all had to make tough choices. He made his, and I made mine. And who's to say what was right and wrong back then? At least we know the reason why we didn't talk. We feel it. It's harder for the young ones, those who weren't here back then, like Ami and Kyra.
True. The young do suffer from the sins of elders.
They must all think we're old and stubborn. We're less of a family for it. That saddens me more than anything.
True. Okay, what can you tell me about the island?
We go a long way back, our tribe in this land. For more than 1,000 years, these hills and forests are all we've known. We haven't left the island because we couldn't. If all of us left, there would be no one to guard it.
Yeah, but there's like 2 guys guarding it now. One of them's me.
The hills harbor a dark secret, but it was always our secret, and we were sworn to protect it, keep it, and shield the rest of the world from it. But the hills are treacherous.
They are.
They whisper to the weak, draw them in. And the weak have dug too deep. The secret within is coming out.
Moria. They dug too deep.
We are the people of the dawn, but the sun is setting. I fear for all that is good in this world.
Every new end is a new beginning. Boy.
What saved us from the fog, saved our people from being turned into soulless things, was the very thing we'd neglected so long. Tradition, rituals, magic.
Power.
What saved us was what our forefathers did to protect the whole island. And it took all this to make us see what we'd forgotten.
True. Complacency is bred by, nothing really happening. It's always the flat times when there's no challenge that people generate.
We lost nobody. At least in the tribe. Of course, we lost everyone else. And it's not like we were isolated from the rest of the island. Those people were our friends and neighbors. And many here lost people. Good people they cared about and loved. I know Ami still hopes that her husband is alive out there. But he's probably dead. Let's hope he's dead. The alternative, it's much worse.
Yes. Sometimes dead is better. Slap myself for that.
I don't know if those things that came back from the sea have memories or feelings. I hope they're just empty shells used by the Grey Men to serve their needs, to spread their filth. If there is any humanity left in them, well, that's a new kind of hell that I don't even want to think about.
Good luck they are dead.
Why others survived the fog, I couldn't tell you. Could be there's a purpose to it, could be just luck. But us, our tribe, we were protected. And that's not something we can ignore. We have a purpose now. We have a mission.
That mission, if you recall, came to an end. Oh, excuse me. Came to an end with the storyline. You as well. Alright. So let's talk about some of the things that are attached to this area. Well, for example, the trailer park itself remains, like I said, a major sanctuary. You have everything you need here. Merchant, dungeon entrance, and of course lots of missions. But let's talk about the other parts attached to the Wabanaki. Now, first of all, he mentioned Old Joe and the Bastard Brothers mentioned the casino. Now, this is a little weird because there really isn't a major Native American casino or Native tribe in Maine, at least not as far as I remember. I don't think the legislature actually lets them have it, but I could be wrong at this time. It's been over 2 decades since I've been to there. Sorry, it's just a habit. But as you can see, it was never completed. The brothers had an idea of selling off the sacred land for this land plus money, and they wanted to build a massive casino. Now, even if, let's assume the federal laws allowed them to do so here, even if they had done so, this facility is far too expensive for this small amount of people you could expect coming down the bridge to this island. It's not going to draw people by itself. Even here in the West Coast where I am now, on major thoroughfares, the casinos are small. I mean, they usually have a pretty good all-you-can-eat buffet attached to it, which is really the only reason I go so, because gambling is kind of a losing proposition. But they're small, compact, and rely on a variety of things, from serving you gas, food, or supplies to tourists, because, well, let's face it, unless you're got the money backing you in a major way like Las Vegas, you're just not going to be able to provide services by the casino alone. Now, as you can see, like I said, the construction crew was turned as they were not, and this is considered a lair, like that says, so there's some pretty nasty stuff in there. I'm not going to be going over it, but due to the relative levels, I'm allowed to go through here without being molested, as it were. But, coming through. There's actually more to this more to their, shall we say, desire to bilk the tourists. Now, remember how he said about he was kind of surprised they didn't put on headdresses and pretend that that's exact for the tourists and pretend that's, you know, their heritage. Turns out they kind of did. They come up here behind the construction site of the Golden Wigwam, and oh my god, is that tacky. Excuse me, sir. Not a good place to be in my way. Okay, over here, by the way, yes, this is a pumpkin patch you will find Jack in with the appropriate mission. There's a whole bunch of them around here. And we'll get over to the other areas shortly. But as you can see, they created a quote-unquote authentic Wabanaki village from 1,000 years ago. Now that we actually see one in the dungeon, the Darkness War, which is a recreation of the Dream Realm, and it doesn't look anything like this. First of all, this teepee does not exist. It's literally an anachronism created by, well, the West. You know, we as a culture see that because of Hollywood, because of John Wayne, because of, you know, cowboys and Indians, that we don't see the reality. Now, the straw ones are a little closer, but they're much smaller than an actual. Gods, so much stuff coming in. They're smaller than the actual longhouses that would have been present in this sort of culture and environment and climate. That's a pretty standard Boy Scout fire there. And I'm sure they get to do authentic bow and arrow exercises with the kids. I mean, let's face it, they're playing to tourists here. And the problem is the Wendigo season kind of screwed that up. But yes, they also apparently had a horse show. Now, considering how expensive horses are, oh, you poor bastards, this probably wasn't cheap to keep going. It was considerably cheaper than the casino. My guess is, though, that the distance from the road and the fact that, again, like, you're not getting a lot of tourists coming there looking for an authentic village, this place wasn't making buco, and they decided to go with the casino. But let's go a little more into the more authentic past. Now, over here to the northeast of the authentic village, as it were, past the Viking runic stone, we handled that in an earlier episode, we have, well, the Akab nesting ground, which is a pretty horrible thing to do, but we also have a number of survivors. Well, the thing is, I can activate them. It's kind of weird. They'll start fighting. and you're supposed to rescue them, but... Oh. They don't last long. I mean, seriously, every time I try to keep them alive, it's impossible. But, if you come through the nesting ground, which is really kind of gross to listen to, over on this side, you come to a... coming through. A pillar with ancient symbols, which, if you activate them, connect to a number of other ones that are listed around here. You even saw some replicas in the authentic village. And you can see here, you can overlook the mine. We'll get to that. And let's go this way. And if you head up here, you can see what they were guarding. The Sabohan Stone. Now, this is the end game for the story missions of Solomon Island here. As you can see, it's got the symbol of the Wabanaki and that, but we do not have the requirements to meet there because I've already done that part of the mission. But as you can see through here, the sacred site has a number of cairn stones on it and is currently haunted by the corrupted souls of the ancestors, because everything around here is corrupted. There is so much filth around here that it's seriously impossible. There's also other, as they say, ritualistic items here. Now, the authenticity of this I can't say, because, you know, us European and those of European descent making this game, whether or not this is... I mean, this seriously doesn't look like authentic in any way. And we have a friendly neighborhood Sasquatch, who's currently having a staring contest with a giant crab monster. Hi, Cliff Walker. He's part of a mission too. But, you know, excuse me. Let's talk about their sacred land. This is what's left of it. This is the quarry that Joe and his brother were talking about. As you can see, it's been completely contaminated by this mollusk pulling up filth from the mountain and spewing into the air to create the corrosive fog. And anybody who doesn't have a CDC suit on or is a bee is infected. We already went over that part. I mean, I don't think the wards that keep the Wabanaki, but they might have a genetic component resisting it. I don't know. I've never seen a corrupted Wabanaki. It could be immune too by the power of Gaia. But right now, it was being dug into by the Illuminati and Oriachi-backed corporations in an attempt to find the Gaian engine down below it. Now, the Gaian engine hasn't become a major part of the plot yet, but just keep that word in mind, because it is going to become... I hate the fact that you guys regenerate. And as you can see, the quarry and associated buildings are currently occupying what was once their sacred land. In fact, this is the area with the giant vortex in it, I believe, when you do the Darkness War. So if you want to take a look at that, there's that link. I think I'm using up most of my links at this point. But in any case, I'm going to teleport back over. Give me a second. Okay, so we're out here by the entrance to the trailer park again, but just north of here is another spot that was mentioned in passing of the Mahadra brothers, the whale watching tours. Now, this section is supposedly owned by Joe, and while whale watching is not exactly uncommon in Maine, whales are. Now, Frank implied there are never any whales, but it's not actually true. There are gray whales that do pass through the Gulf of Maine, but you're more likely to actually find... Excuse me. The hell? Nice jump scare, dude. The fuck was that? Anyways, let's just let him do what he's gonna do. Anyways, yeah, so you're more likely to find seals. So Joe set up this as a tourist trap, because basically all you're gonna see is he's gonna point out a few geological events, like there's that rock over there, there's that small island, and this is a totally made up legend about that particular outcropping. But, you know, whatever you're gonna feed the tourists. Speaking of tourists and being fed. But yeah, there's the parking lot for it, and here's the main shack. And here, of course, is the ticket zone. And, sir, this is private property, and we are closed. Anyways, so yeah, this is the shack they have going up here. And this is their boat. Now, the thing is about most tourist boats is they're kind of a specialty. Off the boat, sir. Oh. Can't seem to fire through a railing there. But as you can see, there's a couple of fishermen who managed to get cat at the wrong time. Excuse me, sir. I don't believe you have a ticket. But as you can see, this is not one of the specialty boats. With embedded seats, this is in fact a whole bunch of lawn chairs that are going to slide right off the top once you hit any sort of chop. And frankly, yeah, Gulf of Maine chop, it's going to happen. And not to mention, you're going to throw up over the side. But as you can see here, tourist season is a bit rough. But, so yeah, they're on the cheap. Not really to be unexpected by the bros. And they don't seem to be doing very well with any of their particular schemes. But we'll leave this charming spot and pop over to the next spot, which is going to take you back to the dungeon that reveals the dream sequence of the ancient Wabanaki to compare it to the authentic village we saw earlier. Okay, so here we are in the dream recreation of the Wabanaki past, and as you can see, it's a heck of a lot more involved and larger and more detailed than that so-called authentic village we saw in the present. Now, these are all dream representations, so now that was impressive, dude. And you didn't even burn your foot. Anyway, so we're seeing a big representation. In other words, these longhouses would have been more appropriate toward the time and place and tribal structure. The blankets, of course, the patterns having individual meanings to the tribes, perhaps even having mystical meanings. I'm not... To pale-face myself, I don't have much lore with that. But they would be designed to hold not only people, but livestock during the winters. And let me tell you, Maine winters are cold. But as you can see, this is theoretically what it looks like in peace before we get to the actual Darkness War section itself. The drying racks for both the hides, which form the clothing, and of course the meat, which would be absolutely necessary to survive that long winter. Now, one of the things I find absolutely and utterly fascinating is that they seem to have completely forgotten, the developers, and let's face it, one of the continuing things is they tend to gloss over a lot of real-life lore. Not the fictional literary lore, because they get that stuff down pat, but they kind of mess up some of the real-life ones. Like, for example, if you have a small tribe that's located on an island, they're going to be absolutely dependent on seafood. But yet you see no representations of seafood or, other materials that would come from the ocean. All of this is typically furs. But what large animals are going to be in a small island in Maine? I mean, I suppose they could take their boats over to the mainland and hunt, but then why not be... All right, they have to stay here to guard. So my guess is they probably have longboats and, go out, get the furs and such and come back. But still, seafood would be like the easiest thing for them to do. And of course, clay pottery, yeah. The thing is that these cultures are not primitive as we portray them in the films. These must be the native standing stones as opposed to the Viking ones we found earlier. Here's one of the ones with the symbols that we found in that minor quest way back when. And this would be where the war actually starts, where the dead start piling up. Now, one of the things to take into account is that this, of course, again, is going to be a vague that's a dragon. Yeah, I'm not going to go any further in here. If you recall, there's a link up there for the full episode of The Darkness War if you want to see it. But for now, I'm just giving a base of a contrast between what our society expects the native tribe's life to be versus more realistic view on it. So the thing is that it's one of the things you'll see as a sort of emphasis in this episode is that sometimes we see what we think we want to see. We are given the story that we think we want to that reinforces our prejudice, but we're not really given the truth, which I suppose is something that's going to continue on into Egypt that I've noticed as we've gone forward. But for now, I think we're going to call this episode for quits and just to move on to the next one. Now, the next interlude should be dealing with the rest of the Blue Mountain area, and then we'll move on to Egypt, which is going to be confusing because, oh my god, if you think this sort of mythology got jumbled up, trust me, Egypt's worst. Anyways, this is Fantastic World saying farewell from Lovecraft Country and the Secret World Interludes. See you next episode.
You will see the dawning of a new age. To be a monarch or a beggar. To lose everything or to become a god. To stand with us or against us. The choice is yours.